Hey everyone, so this is an introduction to my landscape photography presets. Once you get them imported, you're going to find them under the presets panel when you're in the develop module. And these are organized in a way that they're meant to be used in order. So that's why they're numbered. And another thing to note is that each number, so like 1, 2, 3, that is actually considered to be options. So anything that falls under number 2, you would select one of these options. So they're not intended to be used together. They're just meant to pick one because they actually overwrite the settings from each other one. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on the reset preset, which just sets everything to 0. So if you had already made some changes, that just puts everything back. So because these presets are really intended to be used on their own, and then you can tweak them afterwards, but you don't want to start with other settings. The first thing you want to do is under number 2, this is how you select your scene. You have low contrast, medium contrast, and high contrast. And that's not what you're going to end up with. It's what your scene, what your starting scene is. So a good way to determine this is to look at your histogram. And everything on the left side is your shadows, in the middle is your midtones, and on the right is your highlights. So we're looking at this data, and we want, if this is really spread out, like in this image, we have a lot in the shadows, a little bit in the midtones, and we do have some in the highlights. So this is a fairly high contrast scene. What I can do is come in here and try these different presets. So I'm going to look at the medium contrast, see how that looks. I don't like that one too much. That one I really don't like. This one looks really good. And then this high contrast is for dark shadows. Kind of like that, but looking a little bit dark. And this one's for light shadows. Really doesn't work with this image. So I'm going to select this high contrast scene. And even that just gets us a really good starting point. Everything looks pretty good. Next, under number 3, this is just to darken up your image. Typically we try to expose to the right, so our images tend to look way too bright in Lightroom once we bring them in because of that. So this is a good place to bring that down. In this case, I'm already pushed to the left quite a bit, just because it was such a high contrast scene that I was trying to get everything into one. So I'm not going to use these on this particular image. With number 4, this is not highly used, but on some images it might produce a good effect. Basically what it's doing is it's going to create, it's going to put like blue in your shadows to kind of cool them down. Sometimes this looks good, but I'm going to undo that on this image because I don't like the effect here. And then also this one, it cools down the shadows and warms up the highlights. So again, sometimes it works, not on this one. And then under number 5, this is for a vignette. Pretty simple, just a little subtle one, medium, strong, or a really heavy one. In this case, I'll go with the medium vignette. Actually, let's go with strong. And then under number 6, this is for your sharpening and noise reduction. So if you have a really high detail scene, I'd recommend using this one, but it has to be like pure detail. It adds a lot, and this works very well for Fuji cameras. But for other cameras, I would generally recommend using the standard landscape, and that's really all you need to do. You'll have to zoom in to see the effect of that. And then under section 7, this is what I call my color boosters, and I've named these based upon what I've found they work well for, but you'll just have to play around with them and see what effect they have. So if I click one of these, you can see in this case that doesn't work well at all. It's way too saturated and gross. But you can play around with these and see what looks good to you. I might try this haze glow. That's a subtle effect. Kind of like that one. Yellow leaf glow might work well on this. I found these work really well on fall color images. Sometimes like really overcast conditions, it really draws the color out. It works really well for that. And if you say select one that you don't like and you're kind of going through them and you forgot to undo, then 7.2 is just a reset for this specific section. So it just resets your colors back to a baseline. That's really the basics of it. I'll run you through a couple more images just so you can see how they work. So this one's already been edited, so I'm going to reset that. And you can see how kind of dull this looks. I mean, it's a very vibrant scene to start with, but you can see how the shadows are really dark and it's just kind of blah. This is a really high contrast scene again, so I'm going to start by trying that out. That looks pretty nice. Dark shadow is not going to work so well in this one because we have such dark shadows. Light shadows, that might be pushing it a little far. I kind of like it. Yeah, I think I'll go with that one. Extreme high contrast, that's for kind of weird situations. I don't use that one very often. It gets kind of flat and dull, so I'll stick with this one. And in this case, I might try darkening this a quarter stop. Yeah, I like the way that looks. And then I might try the cool shadows and see how that works. You can see how that, if I undo that, you can see like in here how these really adds to the blue of the water, and it adds some blue in the shadows here. So you can see how that adds really nice effect to this image. Cool shadows, warm highlights. Really couldn't see much of a difference on that one. So then I'm just going to add a little vignette. Let's see, I'll try the medium vignette. And then I'll zoom in and turn on try the high detail landscape for this one. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then on this one, I am not even going to touch the color boosters because it's already such a vibrant image. I mean, it was incredible sunset, so I'm just going to leave that one alone. And as far as global adjustments go, I'm done with this image. You can see before and after. Boom. Real easy. So now I'm going to show you this fall color image. Let me just reset that. And you can see in the histogram, because the data is not spread out, it's all concentrated right here, that this is a very low contrast scene. So I'm going to try these low contrast settings first and see how they look. Okay, that looks pretty decent. Overall, I think the image is too bright, so I'm going to darken it up a little. The cool shadows might work well on this one. Yeah, because then it adds this kind of blue tinge to the trunks of the aspens. And might try the warm highlights. No, that one doesn't look very good, so I'm going to stick with that one. And then I'll add a little vignette again, just a subtle vignette. And then this one's a very high detail landscape, so I'll definitely use that preset. And now is where the color boosters really come into play. So for this one, overcast fall color glow, probably going to work pretty well. Or maybe the yellow leaf glow. Yeah, I kind of like the way that one looks. So that's really it. We got a good image there. So this image, come back up and reset this. And you can see how flat and dull it looks, typical raw file, not what you saw at the scene. So I'm going to try, again, looking at the histogram, there's a lot of data on the edges, so I would consider this pretty high contrast. You know, you've got really dark shadows here, and you've got really bright highlights in the sky. So I'll try high contrast scene, pretty good. Dark shadows, that's pretty decent. And light shadows is pushing it too far in this image. So I'll just go with the high contrast scene. And in this case, don't think darkening it is going to work. It looks okay. It might be a little bit too far. I'll just undo that. And I don't think the cool shadows will do. No, it doesn't look good on this image. So I'm just going to add a medium vignette, high detail landscape. And actually, I think this was taken with a Canon, so that might be pushing it a little too far. So maybe we'll do the standard landscape on that one. And then the color boosters is where this is really going to shine. So I have these 4 different sunset presets here. They all do different things. So you just want to go through and try them and see what happens. A little bit of boost. That one is dramatically different. Kind of like that one. Yeah, I think I'll stick with this one. So there we go. Went from this to this. And you can see how the lens distortion also changes. And that's because I have that turned on automatically. Under lens corrections, I have the enable profile corrections on, so if you have a lens with a profile, it's going to automatically apply that. And I also have remove chromatic aberration turned on. So all those are going to be automatically fixed for you. You might want to go back and check them if you're using different lenses, but overall this should work really well.